students in classes. It went until 11:30. We closed at 11:30. One of the things we had immediately was a major traffic problem as cars came in and tried to pick up students. So I took the next step and took my life in my hands and went out and stood in the middle of the traffic and guided traffic in and out of there. And I walked out of there safely. So I know that the students were not thrilled with the idea, but I think on the other side of the coin, what I saw very clearly is students at Cape Elizabeth High School understood the reason why, attended the way they should. Parents were very cooperative that I talked with, and we did have as regular a day as you can. I will never sit here and say that a Saturday or an extra day goes as well as the regularly planned day, but it went well. The teachers were prepared. I think we only had to have, and I'm looking at Mr. Shedd, 7 substitutes? Less than that. So we only had to have a very small number, and that was based on some teachers who did have plans they couldn't change. But I guess what I would like to do more than anything else is to thank the students for the day. I know it wasn't easy. I know it was hard getting up that early in the morning, but they did an excellent job, and we did get through the day. And now we're into April. And so now what I'm doing is hoping against hope that we get to April vacation with no snowstorms. Because if we do that, we won't have to have another Saturday day. So we'll hope that that happens. But I would thank the staff at Cape Elizabeth High School. I thank the administration there. I thank the students who attended that day. It worked out well, and I appreciate very much what a positive spin you put on it, even though some of you probably weren't thrilled to be there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. High school, Model UN trip. Mr. Shedd?
Okay, I saw this on the agenda and I wasn't sure if it was about a trip that was coming up or recognition for a trip that just took place, but I think it's a trip that just took place.
Yes.
So I will mention, I talked to Ms. McNulty today and she talked to me about the Model UN trip that recently took place at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. She described it as the best Model UN conference, the best organized, the tightest organized one that they've attended. And she explained to me that part of the reason was that the committees were also kept relatively small, because normally our students are in fairly large committees, and you have to sort of get airtime, and not that you have to fight other people for airtime, but you can sort of sit back and not be recognized. But the committee size was such that our students had lots of opportunities to stand out. And it was a wonderful experience, and Ms. McNulty is looking forward to the possibility of another conference towards the end of May, but a more local conference. I will say that there were 2 students who were recognized as outstanding commendations, and they were Peter Brigham and John Aronson. So it was a very positive experience for all the students and for the adults who were involved in that trip.
Thank you. And I think you maybe have the next piece before you sit down.
I am up. Oh, yes. And I wanted to call up a couple of students, Ashley Robinson and Peter Kelly, if they can come on up here and stand next to me. I'll embarrass them. I won't make them talk, although they're very good at that. But I wanted to recognize 4 students as Presidential Scholar nominees. Oh, she faced the board. Okay. This is Ashley Robinson and Peter Kelly, 2 seniors, 2 out of our 4 seniors who were recognized as nominees for the Presidential Scholar Awards, and it really is quite extraordinary to have 4 nominees. Sometimes we can go for a few years at a time without a single nominee, so to have 4 in 1 year. And basically, the Presidential Scholarship was started, I think, sometime after World War II. I hope my history isn't wrong. And it was started at the instigation of President Truman, I believe, and it really is. It comes out of the Department of Education, who sifts through a lot of criteria that are not really well known or well published, but they always land on really strong students. They are interested in not only people who are strong academically, through SAT scores and GPAs and that sort of things, but also folks who have some things in their resumes in terms of school activities, out-of-school activities that sort of make them stand out. And it really is quite unusual. We have 2 students who are athletes involved in many, many activities. And Ashley and Peter are sort of sorting through some fine college choices that they have on their plate, which is wonderful, and due to the same kind of things that led them to get these nominations. I will say that the process for these are nominations, and then ultimately what happens is they are required, if they choose to do it, to go through a very complex process that involves writing 6 essays, I think, and filling out all kinds of voluminous forms. And their names are put into competition with other students in Maine, and I think ultimately it's 2 students from each state are selected to go to a very, very nice expenses paid trip down to Washington, D.C. in the summertime. We hope that maybe they will be selected, but it's a tremendous honor just to be nominated. The other 2 students we have, Libby Cummings, I think, is at a college trip, and Charlie Governale, I believe he told me he was at a science team trip. Is that right?
In Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts. So I just wanted to congratulate them and introduce Peter and Ashley to the board for you.
Very good.
And congratulations.
Thank you, Jeff. Middle school. Steve?
Okay, I'm going to have Sydney White come on up and join me. The other student whom I'm going to speak a little bit about right now, Evan Long, was not able to join us as he's homesick. I received a letter from Maine Swimming Incorporated that says that Sydney qualified to represent the state of Maine in the 2008 Eastern Zones Swimming Championships of the United States Swimming. And that competition was just held in Buffalo, New York, and the organization wanted us to know just how proud they are of Sydney and her accomplishments, dedication, time commitment, organization, goal setting, all of these pieces that are necessary to achieve the level of accomplishment and skill that Sydney has achieved, along with Evan. And when I was talking with Sydney, she mentioned a couple of different strokes that she happens to prefer and one she doesn't, which is, which ones do you like?
I like the butterfly and free. I kind of like the backstroke, and I don't like the breaststroke.
Okay. The breaststroke is out. I'll write a letter to these folks, let them know. So, congratulations. Thanks for representing us. And the next piece, Tom, how about you and I do that one together? You're going to be up next anyways, I think. Okay, and you can start us off if you like.
Young ones? Well, you have in your packet a recognition of 2 Cape Elizabeth chess teams, K through 6 and K through 8 teams, both won the state champions at the Maine State Scholastic Chess Championships held in Orono on Saturday, March 15th. And I think the word got out to a couple of them. I don't see many here, but I'll go through Pond Cove's involvement with it. At Pond Cove, players who scored very well. Well, let me read them all. The K through 6 team was Wesley Parker, grade 3, Danny Brett, 6th grade, Matthew Fishbein, grade 4, Colin Smith, 6th grade, Jack Demeter, 5th grade, let me see, Nicholas Shedd, Leo Wing, Ethan Dupere, and Will Krieger. Also, I should mention Matthew Reale Hayden, who was a strong member of the team who was sick that day and couldn't make it.
Have it come up?
It's Brett. Oh, there are people. I didn't see your name in the back.
And we do have a couple of folks here
Come on up.
Tom, can
for
you
this
have him
right
come up?
now. So let's see. Leo, come on up, and I'll introduce also Peter and Anthony. Why don't you 2 guys come on up too? And there's a young gentleman right there. Do you know this guy? Matthew was the Cheshire.
Yeah, Matthew.
Oh, Matthew Fishbein.
Yeah.
Coco, go ahead.
Matthew and Wesley were also honored because they have a very
Come on up over here, Leo.
high ranking. Yeah.
And it looks like Leo's bringing some help with him. Okay, so also as part of the K-8 team, we had the write-up that I have here says that it was quite an upset as their perennial champions in this event. Deer Isle was upset by our students, and that was by a mere half point. Top scorers in this category were Brett Parker, Peter Campbell, Ethan Danino, Daniel Epstein, and Anthony Pachera. Strong performances and important round wins were also contributed by Shannon Daly and Alex Silva. The final decision came down to the very last game played in the fourth and final round by Anthony against a Deer Isle student. He played an outstanding game to help secure the team victory. So congratulations to our state meeting champions.
The two trophies are somehow wound up in Pond Cove, and they're in the display case.
There
were two of them.
Very good.
And one more pitch. Pond Cove still needs a coach. A lot of these kids learned when they were little, and we were looking for a coach for the younger kids. And I think you contact outgoing community services head Sue Weatherby.
And that might be it for the middle school news. Is that right?
Principal for the day.
For a day.
Oh, principal for a day, yes. I don't see my assistant here at all. We had a young man, there was a raffle at the basketball bonanza for principal for the day, and a young guy decided that he was going to go after that with every part of his being that he could. So he put in quite a few raffle tickets, and as luck would have it, he won. I don't know, he thinks it was lucky. I'm not sure he did after the day was over. He had a couple of lunch duties, and he was the line holder for that. He also attended the Middle School Parents Association meeting and presented some ideas that students had shared with them on things that work or things that they would like to see change at the middle school. He also wrote an article about his day that's going to be in the next CEMS Times that will come out probably in about a week, so please check that out, and I'll also have a picture of Justin in the paper to go along with it. Anything else?
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, if the board doesn't mind, I'm going to move up the proposed school calendar, which is right now at 9A, to just before 6, communications. Anybody have a problem with that? Because I think there's people here that would like to speak about it, and I don't want to hold them the whole night. Oh, okay, great. Trish, can I turn it over to you?
Yep.
Thank you.
The calendar you see before you is the result of months and hours of work. The primary purpose, I'd just like to remind people, for the calendar is to support student learning. And this looks different at the 3 different schools due to schedules, curriculum, that type of thing. So there's sort of an inherent challenge in the calendar process. We, as I said, spent hours considering the various iterations on the calendar, how we could lay it out. We discussed the pros and cons of the various schedules. And in addition to that, we also had to work within the confines of the calendar itself. For example, when the holidays occur, the fact that we have a presidential election. So the result of all of those discussions and considerations is what you have before you. So we need to move to have
Yes.
discussion. I would move that the school board approve the calendar, or actually, let me step back. I will highlight quickly what some of the key changes and attributes of the calendar are. We do have a post-Labor Day start to the school year. We have the Thanksgiving week is a little bit different this year. We have moved the 2 teacher days from the Thanksgiving week to early November. And the reason for that is, again, due to the presidential elections, which occur on Tuesday, November 4th. We have been asked to not have students in the high school building that day for safety reasons, and as a result, we opted to make that a teacher day so that it wasn't a complete loss to the district, and to utilize that Monday as the second day. The December holidays will begin on the 24th. The fact that Christmas is on a Thursday and New Year's Day is on a Thursday pose a little bit of problem in terms of the length of the December holidays, which is why we've opted to have Monday and Tuesday as school days for that, which is a little bit different. We have fewer middle school early release days, and the other major change is the change in the school hours, primarily for the high school. Pond Cove and the middle school only move about 5 minutes. And before I move, I want to thank people for who have took surveys earlier on and who shared their opinions, and I also want to extend a huge thank you to the committee members who met frequently and for long durations, and that would be Steve Conley, Debbie Butterworth, Shari Robinson, Dwight Ely, Troy Henninger, Kathy Walsh, Sue Weatherby, Kathy Ray, and Alan also sat in. So, and we had some consulting advice from Keith Weatherby, who I'd like to thank. So, without further
Trish,
ado...
could we just add one more thing?
Yes.
I think looking at the end of the year in June and the extended time because of, if possible, snow days, just so they also note that, because that was one of the reasons we had to work pretty hard to figure out how to do these days.
Okay. Right now, the last day of school without snow days would be June 15th. If we have 5 snow days, it will be June 22nd. People were concerned about how late we were getting out in June, which is why we added the 2 days in December. We've taken out half a day for teacher conferences. So we did listen, and we did make every effort working with the calendar as it's constructed, the physical calendar, not the school calendar, to get out as soon as possible in June. So on that note, I would like to move that the school board consider adopting the draft calendar that you have in front of you.
Thank you, Trish. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, why don't we hear from people in the audience first, and then if the school board has some information or questions, they can ask them at that point. Is that all right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to the calendar? And if there is, if you just come up to the podium and tell us your name and let us know what you're thinking. Thanks.
We didn't really prepare anything to talk about this, but we'll just still go.
For the television, could you give your name and so that they'll have that?
I'm Rosie Lemberg.
And I'm Gabe Donahue.
Thank you.
Had we known that you guys had spent so many months and hours discussing this, we would have been involved sooner, so we could have had our voice heard earlier. But in the last month, we took a survey at the high school, and there was over, I think, 200 students that responded to the survey, and we got a 2/3 response saying that they were in opposition to the time change. A lot of people are concerned with sports and their general routines. I also spoke to a few teachers who, I'll give an example of a teacher who decided that it wouldn't be a very good idea because she would have to provide for his child both in the morning and the afternoon another $2,000 sum to her, yearly expenses that she doesn't have to pay now and shouldn't have to pay. But we just really want to stress how many students are against this and how this is probably going to most directly affect both the students and the staff of the high school. And we just urge you to consider that the students don't want this to happen.
Some of the primary concerns of the students mainly reside in the fact that most students at K have been urged from young age on to participate in extracurriculars, so we've had very strong participation in not only sports but other extracurriculars like mock trial, debate team, a lot of specific teams that meet late in the evening or already push kids' homeworks and assignments back even further. And although kids will all relate to getting more sleep would be great, the fact of starting later and getting out later would push back all these extracurriculars events, further pushing back kids' homework assignments even later. So we feel like the late start time would indeed add to sleep time. However, it would act as a procrastination technique almost. Students would just end up staying up later thinking to themselves, oh, well, I can reconcile for this extra half hour by sleeping tomorrow morning. So really nothing's gained in the end. And there are also, like Rosie said, a lot of concerns for parents who drive their kids to school still, as only juniors and seniors really drive themselves to school. And a lot of parents' work schedules don't work around a later start time, seeing as how it's already hard for parents to get their kids to school that early, or that late, in fact. And then also students who have outside of school-sponsored activities after school. Because of the school change, that doesn't mean that their non-school sponsored activities would change times as well. Kids who participate in particular nannying or part-time jobs also have to consider the fact of they have to tell their employers that they're not going to be able to work that extra half hour. So,
And I know that a lot of the staff has been saying that they think that, or at least the people who are going to be voting on this think that, you know, kids are saying no now, but after next year they're going to love it. But I just want you to keep in mind that now the students are saying no, and now is when we're voting on it. So just keep in mind what the students want. But we appreciate how much time and effort you spent.
yeah, sorry for the late consideration.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I think Kirsten and I have a couple things that we'd like to say.
Okay.
Are you good?
Yeah. Or, yeah, you can go first.
3 points that I want to bring up are that community reaction to this proposal has, I've seen more than one email saying that students between the ages of 14 and 17 are incapable of making their decisions, and that that yes, some staff do believe that we will appreciate the change after it's taken place, but to say that we are incapable of deciding when we want to get up in the morning and decide what our schedules should be is just ridiculous. At 16, we can drive. At 18, 1 year less than 17, we can vote. We can also sign up for service. And there's not, and I mean, to say that that 1 year difference makes that big of a difference, that doesn't make logical sense to me. So I think that, if nothing else, to degrade student opinion to that level of, oh, we don't know what we're talking about. I'm not saying that anyone is doing that, but just going by community reaction, that just, please don't make that mistake. I think as a student representative, it's Kirsten and my job to represent what student opinion is. Students voted 2-1 against it for a reason. And I mean, while we do appreciate how much time and effort has obviously gone into this schedule, I mean, doing what she was talking about earlier, I mean, it sounded really tricky. I mean, it obviously, I mean, down to the last detail. But I mean, I know that as students, we haven't really even seen that much of that. And yeah, had we, like she was saying earlier, had we known that this was taking place sooner, we would have begun working with this sooner. So I guess what I'm saying with this point is that in the future, if it's something that's going to directly affect us as high school students, can we get more advanced notice of it? And then my third and final point is, does the research showing that this change, that, you know, the research is that if we get up later because our brains start working later as teenagers, we are more awake and therefore more alert and take better attention to classes and things as it goes on throughout the day. And that makes sense. But does starting school 30 minutes later, would it really make that big of a difference? Because, I mean, I looked up this research, and it said 10 to 10:30 was whenever we would really start going. So if we're going to do this, why don't we do it that much later as opposed to just 30 minutes later? Would it really make that significant of a difference? So just points that I wanted to throw out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, as Hudson did point out, the students voted 2-1 against later start, and I feel that this voice should not be ignored or considered invalid, because Cape students have proven that we are responsible in the high percentage of students participating in extracurricular, the high test scores that we are producing, and so this voice definitely does need to be heard. Hudson did bring up a lot of the similar points that I'd like to make, that it does affect us in extracurriculars, and I know that with people who are leaving school missing the last period, if they're missing the last period and a half now, that does affect them a lot more. The extra 30 minutes, especially with like cross country, leaving once every week, the extra 30 minutes does add up quite a bit. And so, yeah, I feel that the students have spoken, and as Hudson said, that our brains aren't, as studies say, our brains aren't working till 10 o'clock. Then if we are going to go for that, a later start, we should go all the way and go for a 10 o'clock start or a 9 o'clock start. The extra half hour would only inconvenience a lot of people in the afternoon and wouldn't really add to that much extra sleeping time. I feel that if I was going to be going to school next year at Cape, I would be staying up an extra half hour at night doing homework, thinking that I'd compensate for it in the morning in my sleep, as Rosie and Gabe pointed out. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do you want to address any of the, because I think some questions came up.
First, you didn't get involved too late in the process. Your voice has been heard, and you've been an integral part of the process. So don't be concerned about that. A couple things. I think 10 to 10:30, ideally, if that supports the research, I think, unfortunately, that's impractical, because if a 2:30 release time is going to impact your extracurricular, we can't shorten the day. So you'd effectively be getting out at 4:30. So that, while you're right, the research supports that, I think that's even more impractical to pursue that option. I'm going to try to address your points and questions. If I don't get anything, if there's something I missed, please remind me. And there were other people other than students who were concerned about the impact on extracurricular. We did involve the athletic director. He sort of allayed those fears a little bit. And I will tell you your voice is being heard, because there were members of the committee, and even when we started this process, we wanted to start at 8:30, which would have given you a full hour to sleep, to sort of address that. Because of the concerns on extracurricular, because the research is a little inconclusive, because of the thought that you would just be staying up later to do your homework, we did listen to you, we did consider your viewpoint and those of others, and that was why we sort of compromised to the 8 o'clock time. That also allowed us to not have to impact the Pond Cove schedule significantly, because we did have some concerns from many parents and actually even some employees there who, I guess, in the long past, Pond Cove did actually start a little bit later, and they found that wasn't great for the younger students as it got to be later in the day. And so anyway, that's sort of, I'm hoping, answering some of those questions. Also, in terms of sports and extracurricular, Falmouth, who is one of the communities that are in our competitive league, has an 8 to 2:25 schedule. So we thought that if they're one that we're competing with and they're on this schedule, which I think they've found to work out really well, and it works for them, if they're in our conference, technically it should work for us. And we thought, and we're prepared to sort of monitor the impact over the next year, that it was worth trying it for a year. With the commitment on the part of the calendar committee, then in 12 months we'll look at this, or at the end of the school year, and look at this. And if nobody likes it, then we'll go back to the way it was. Or if people do like it and say we'd really like it to be an hour, then we've tried it and we move it back even further. I don't think we'll ever get to 10 or 10:30, but we might get to 9 o'clock. And there are several members on the committee, myself included, who are willing to sort of monitor it and survey the students and the staff and the community to see if the impact is as we're hoping it to be. But you raise very valid points about your schedule and, your homework and the time crunch that you're under. So I think that sort of focused some light on some of those issues, which we hope we can address. And by trying it for a year, that also gives us an opportunity to look at some of those things that you've raised as issues and perhaps take some action on that.
Thank you.
I don't think, yeah, the idea of trying it out for a year doesn't seem like a bad idea in and of itself, but I think that, I mean, if we don't want to do it, if students don't want to do it at 8:30 or 8, then the idea of, 8, I was looking at the wrong number, doing it at 10:30, we really wouldn't want to do that. I was just making the point with that statement that, I mean, I don't know if the returns that we'd be getting on, the benefits really outweigh the negative impacts. I mean, in math class the other day, we were talking about, cost analysis and everything in statistics class, and we were talking about how if, say, you take a pre-test and you have one student who goes from a 0 to a 50, but you have another that went from a 98 to a 99, what's it really worth it? The one that went from a 98 to a 99. So it's kind of like that. I mean, sure, you might see test scores and grades go up a little bit with the extra hours of sleep, but would it really be enough to warrant the effects on all these extracurriculars? Because, I mean, I know that, just my personal experience, I have to work. And I know that there's other students who have to work, who have to save up for college and everything. And if you do that, and if, I know that if we were on the 8 o'clock schedule, this year I'm blessed, but last year, not so much, I wouldn't have been able to work. So, I mean, I'm thinking about the percentage of students. I don't know the exact number, so I can't, give a statistic, but I'm thinking about the students that really need these extracurriculars, that need to work, whose ways into college is through athletics instead of academics. So I mean, that's the point I was trying to make, that if y'all really think that the benefits will outweigh the negative impacts, then okay, but just, be sure.
I should add, actually, this schedule also allows us to have one combined bus run for the middle school and the high school students. I think if we stayed at 7:30, that might pose a bit of a challenge. It would actually make the middle school start a little earlier. And I know that people were concerned a little bit about that to some extent. It's a cost-saving measure and just to utilization, so.
Yeah, I feel that that's important, but I feel that that's not the most important issue. The school bus, the gas, it is valid, but I think the reason for doing this should be to benefit the children and the students, not, yeah.
And I just wanted to add to what Trish was saying, and also having heard from all of you and all of those points that you've raised, I feel over the course of the calendar committee meeting time were definitely brought up. So even if you might not have felt that you individually had your voice heard, it was, believe it or not, being brought to us by different teachers or administrators who were part of the committee that were raising the red flags, and have we really thought through this, have we really thought through that? So when we were looking at other communities who had tried it differently, we were asking some of those questions and finding that ultimately over time that the kids ended up really liking the move back in time. So we were also trying to find out from the other communities what the kids felt, over the long term, and we were encouraged by the positive response and also the positive response from the communities that it was indeed a good thing, and that some of these obstacles that people were very concerned about originally weren't as big of obstacles as they thought. So actually your ideas, which are all valid and very legitimate concerns, were things that had been discussed throughout the process. And I'm encouraged, sometimes change is very hard, and I'm encouraged by the fact that, let's try something, be open-minded. If it's not a good idea, or if we don't find that it is working for our community or for our students, then we'll be flexible and we'll adapt accordingly or adjust accordingly. But I want to say just one last thing. I think that always behind all of our discussions, and I was not there for most of the meetings, I've heard, as we've discussed it rather seriously amongst ourselves too, that the motivating factor was supporting student learning. So I don't think the buses and other things, that wasn't what was really driving the conversation. We're really trying to, think through and be sensitive to what we can do that's better for the students.
Other board members? Oh, yes. Can you come up to the microphone? We can't pick you up back there. Thank you. Sorry.
I'm Trillia Mrintal. I'm a sophomore. And I was just wondering if we had getting out of school later. I know that on Sundays, students who are on sports teams have to leave school early to be able to make it to games on time. And I'm just wondering, this happens a lot, especially during the winter. I know a lot of the hockey teams have to leave early and also in the fall. But is this just going to make us miss more school, or are we going to leave earlier or later? I just want to know how that's going to be dealt with.
Want to talk about what Keith was talking about, or?
Yeah, we did ask that question because obviously that impacts student learning as well. I think there's some discussion among athletic directors that perhaps when there's long distance travel, that they may be moved to a Saturday competition.
Okay.
Or he did actually have statistics that, we did ask that question, how many students are going to be impacted. So, and also he's meeting regularly, and as they do, with other athletic directors, and there's a chance that other communities in recognition of this time may move back a little bit. So you don't have to miss quite as much school. So that is certainly being discussed. We realize that that's an issue. I think that's sort of why, another reason why we went to the a schedule that's similar to Falmouth's again, because if you're already getting out early,
Right.
by not moving it back an entire hour, where we really started off, there shouldn't be a huge incremental loss of school time or instructional time as a result of that.
And also going off sort of what Hudson said about working, I know in the summer a lot of high school students have jobs that they have to start right after school ends, and it also usually interferes with how late we already get out. I know I work at a summer camp in New Hampshire all summer, and I have to leave right from school when school ends, so I think that's going to affect a lot of more students than you would think, having it get out later, so that should also be considered. Thank you.
Which is why you, initially, the calendar committee had the June 26th end date, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it's moved back to the 22nd to address what Trillium had just said, is because we did run up against a whole lot of issues with people who got done with school in June, went right to a summer activity. So initially, the calendar committee was looking at an end date of June 26th, and we were pretty clear that that was too late. So when we started backing that up, we ended up with backing up a whole bunch of other things too, because it was a pretty cause and effect relationship. So that's why we have now, the latest is 22nd, and we're hoping, unlike this year, that we won't use up all our snow days, and we actually could get finished on Friday, June 19th, which is more in line with what we would be doing this time. So, more comments?
Yeah, I just have questions. Yeah.
Sure.
I don't understand, if we had a vote and pretty much all students voted against it, what other proof do we need to give you that no one wants to do this? And also, you are saying that just 1 year is like just test it out for a year, and then if it doesn't work, but a year is like a long period of time, and that's gonna like mess up people's entire school year or their jobs for the whole year. And then if it doesn't work, you have to switch your whole schedule again. So it's not like we're trying it out for 2 days and then seeing if it works or not. But
I just had two questions. I have a friend who goes to Scarborough, and they start later than us and get out earlier than us. So is the times just different from town to town, or?
You're talking about the school day or the
Yeah,
calendar
they
year?
start at 7:45 and get out at 1:45. So
Each,
is it just different?
the hours are different. If you even look at some of the other communities whose calendars we compared ourselves to, they range anywhere from 6 hours a day to 6.5, which is what we have.
Okay.
But the number of days, student days in the calendar, a minimum number is legislated by the state, so we have to accommodate at least that number of days.
Okay. And the other question I had was, as Hudson mentioned before, that most of the research shows that to have this really be the effect that we wanted to, you'd have to start our school way later than 8 o'clock. It's actually to show a really positive effect. So why are we starting by moving it back just a half an hour, kind of to do it not fully, because we're not really going to see an effect on that. I only see really negative effects for that. I mean, what are the positive effects that you're looking for only a half an hour?
Trish, you want me to go? I was one of those people who started off saying I would really like the high schools to start at 9. Because I actually still can remember what it was like to be in high school and knew what my body wanted to do, which was to stay up really late and get up really late. But when you serve on the school board and you work with committees, it becomes a process of compromise. And actually, I believe you sat in one of the meetings of the calendar committee, and I think you shared some concerns with us about a month ago, and those were heard. And it started shifting the mindset of a great deal number of people on the committee. They wanted to recognize the fact that you do have extracurricular activities and jobs and other issues that were of concern to you, and parents and other citizens. I was one of the last people to move. I still, as of about several weeks ago, still wanted it to be at 9 and was feeling very frustrated because I had the same concern about, well, we're not really talking about a big change here. But in discussions, it was said, well, why don't we try to make change a little bit more gradual so we give everybody a chance to feel a little bit more comfortable with it. So we're kind of betwixt and between, because on the one end we're being asked not to change because of all of these other concerns, and then on the other end we're being asked to make a change that's significant. So there's really no right answer as far as I can see. I don't think we're going to please anybody. We're not going to please everybody for sure, time-wise, calendar-wise. But how can we get to a place where maybe we can get to some significant part where we say, well, okay, we'll give this a try, we'll see how it works out. And I know a year sounds like a long time, especially when it's your high school years. It is a long time, and it's frustrating. You're going to be the guinea pigs, and nobody wants to be that. I was that when I was in high school, but we come from a place where we care about the learning that happens in the school, and I think that we all can recognize that at 7:30 in the morning, we probably aren't the sharpest.
What's
Right.
only a half hour going to do, though? Because everything's going to be pushed back, sports, homework, everything. You're just going to stay up an extra half hour and then get the same amount of sleep. I don't feel at 7:30 when we start class into when first period ends, I feel no difference. I feel the same, like, tiredness. And I think most people feel right now, because you're making such a little change, that it's not for us, it's more for the buses and those other reasons.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's definitely not for the buses. It really is for you guys. And again,
The reason why it's at 8 o'clock is because of the process of compromise.
Right. But if it's for us, then why is our opinion not
Can I actually,
being listened to?
I do want to address that, because the other thing that you realize when you start working in large groups of people and you're trying to reach consensus is that I've now heard from several of you that it was 2 to 1. So that means for every 2 people who are feeling like you're feeling, there's another person who disagrees with you and might see it differently, or might feel that that extra half an hour would make a big difference in their lives. And so it's about balance sometimes. I mean, we certainly learn that we can't please everybody. In fact, rarely do you even please half the people, and sometimes you please even fewer than that. But our objective up here is to also be focused on student learning and trying to make good decisions for what we believe would benefit the students and the educational community. So there has to, it's compromise, it's balance, it is hearing, but also understanding that there is a difference of opinion. It's not all of the students. It might be right now the majority of students, but also collecting feedback from other communities where it might have started like that and has ended up being a different place. You sometimes have to trust what other communities have gone through and how the students have come around on it. Students who are your age and have found it to be a very positive thing once they've had the opportunity to live it for a period of time.
I think that for the 2-to-1 ratio, that, I mean, it's been brought up a lot, but like, you see all of us here right now, we're the people who know that we have so much to do, and we're like the busiest kids in this school, and we're the ones who know that we're still going to have to get up early to go to meetings, probably twice a week, and we're the ones who know that we're still going to be up till 11:30, 12 every single night doing homework. But that's okay. But I just have one more question. Where did the initial idea of this come from? Like, were our test scores lower compared to the rest of the state, or our academic performance lower, or it was just an idea that came up and then?
Want me to try? The calendar committee meets every year. It's a subcommittee of the policy committee, which is a subcommittee of the school board. And every year, the calendar committee works for several months with a whole bunch of different people, including a student rep, to try to work on the next year's calendar. And when I first became part of the calendar committee, I thought, oh, how hard could this be? Well, I found out it's quite hard. And as you've seen, there's a lot of different pieces, and when we change something, it affects everything else. And so I'm not sure I'm addressing specifically your question, but just in terms of what the calendar committee is and what they do, and it is done every single year. And every year we've made changes. There were late starts and early releases, and we got some feedback from folks saying, well, you know, we're not sure we like the late starts, we're not sure we like the early releases. And then we've got some of the teaching staff that says, but we need that time to plan. And so, as Karen said, we're dealing with huge groups of people that all have their own concerns and suggestions, and when it all comes back down to it, we try to incorporate as much as we can. And as I think you've already heard, that the students' opinion was very important, and we were hearing it, and which is probably why we don't have a calendar in front of you that starts at 9 or 9:30, which is the wish for at least one board member, but some others as well. So that's the process, and in the calendar committee, I think each year has met even earlier than the previous year, recognizing that there's going to be a whole bunch of new issues and questions and concerns, and to try to come up with a calendar that will satisfy a huge group of people. And I'm not sure that, I don't think there's a calendar out there that could possibly satisfy everybody at this point. So that's why we came back with what Trish was saying, is trying to come up with a compromise where we're not starting at 9 or 9:30, we're trying 8 o'clock and see how it goes. And I think there's a bunch of us on the calendar committee that are committed to monitoring that through the year to see if, in fact, is the 8 o'clock causing a problem, or is it not causing a problem. And the busing piece is just a side piece, but my sense with the calendar committee was that the real issue was student learning. It wasn't about better scores, it wasn't about comparing ourselves to anybody at all. It was about what is best for the students, and I felt like the calendar committee was committed to what is best for students, because even just within the committee members, you had a bunch of people that disagreed with different ideas. Well, how about this? No. How about that? No. And so we had to keep reminding ourselves that it's about the students. Not that we didn't know that, but as different people went off on different tangents, we reminded ourselves that it was about the students.
Thank you, Kathy. I think that was true. To answer your question about the time, I think it's physiologically kids stay up later and get up, get up later in the morning. And there had been some research and articles related to that. And one of the communities that was featured in one of the articles was Edina, Minnesota. And Cape Elizabeth participates in a consortium called Project Blueprint, and those are schools similar to ourselves. They start at, I believe, 9 o'clock. And that sort of caught our eye, again, in support of student learning. So we spent a lot of time speaking with some of the people out in Edina to see sort of how they found it working. And it's not driven by test scores. It's really, again, driven by your alertness in the classroom and your, someone used a great phrase, and I'm going to draw a blank here, but your ability to learn. When is your learning most optimal? And it would be later in the morning. And we did spend some time speaking with Edina. Interestingly enough, they were one of the first communities to start later. And then what happened was some of the other communities around them, the surrounding communities, including Minneapolis, which is a large school district, followed them. So they became leaders, sort of in recognition of the fact that you're probably more awake at 9 o'clock and then more ready to learn. We've had some teachers in this district as well who've made the comment and sort of gave us the feedback that first period, I know my kids aren't, the students in my class aren't as awake as second or third period. So I think we have a lot of empirical data and observations that would support that. So again, because we're balancing all the learning needs of kids at all three schools, and 6-year-olds have different needs than 16 or 17-year-olds, we've really adjusted and ended up at a compromise. And if you can sleep till 6:30 instead of 6, I'm guessing you won't be complaining. But that's why we thought we would try it. So that's sort of the context of what, and as a result, we also did, when you guys started asking, we looked at the research on the other side, and it does say exactly what you say. It's sort of inconclusive research, that the tendency is for kids to stay up later, for lots of reasons, not just homework and extracurricular, but just because you stay up later. So we realized it's inconclusive. That was sort of another reason why to sort of start at this compromise time and see if anyone notices a difference.
Just curiosity, how will we know if it's working? Like, will it be? What are the bars?
I think it'll be to sort of ask the students, are you feeling like you're more awake in your first period class or no? We would ask the teachers. We will, I mean, that you guys are really the ones that are most impacted by it.
Because I was thinking about it, I mean, it couldn't be just test scores because every class is different. I mean, there's too many lurking variables in that.
And it's not test scores. We're not, test scores. That's not where our focus is. It's really when are you in a position to learn and absorb the information that in a classroom. It's optimal learning conditions. That's what we're trying to aim for. And really, we need to speak with you. That's a very good question. And it would be great if the students could sort of help us develop the measurement tools for doing that. So really, it's speaking with you and the teachers. You're really the ones that are most impacted by this.
Okay. Right.
What would be the harm in just taking 30 minutes out of our school day, since other schools around us are doing that, and ending at 2?
Actually, the trend is the other way. I mean, there's some communities in Massachusetts, for example, that are even overriding their tax situation so they can add time to the day. We actually would like to add more time, honestly, and some of the decisions in the schedule and in the calendar are so that we can lengthen the instructional time, have fewer interrupted weeks. The trend in education is really to longer days and even longer school years, which we actually had set out to do, but because of budget situations couldn't. So it's really more time rather than less time.
And I was also thinking, you stated that a lot of teachers feel that their first period students aren't as awake as their second and third. I think that another way around that would be our daily rotation. We have a period first every day except for one out of 4 days. If the daily rotation made a last period once or twice in the 4 days, then I think that might also, because obviously a period then has a handicap, and that would also kind of take away the need for a later start.
I guess that's something maybe Mr. Shedd could either think about, address, or scowl about.
Yeah. Sorry.
Could I say, I'd just like to say a couple of words, it'll be more than two, but about this, is that For me, as I listen to this, I've sat on the calendar committee. I've sat on the calendar committee since I've been here and before this, and it's always a big issue. But to me, there's a much bigger picture that we're not painting, but we're trying to put together, is that we're in the 21st century, and education is changing a lot, the demands of education. I started school in 1951, so that was a couple years ago, and the demands of education are changing greatly. So when you hear people talk about having more time, having different time, looking at it, we're looking at it also from the changes we've got to make in order to get you prepared to be adults of the 21st century, and the curriculum we do. So there are things going on that you aren't even aware of, and probably should be in the long run, but we have a curriculum committee who is totally rewriting curriculum. That committee is looking very clearly at all the components of the curriculum, because we know for you that we need to ensure that we're doing the very best job possible. We have a lot of students here in Cape Elizabeth who score very highly on testing. There's no question that there are a lot of students here who could score even higher. There are a lot of students who aren't scoring highly that should be scoring high. And why we want to see the high testing is not so we can pat ourselves on the back, but because we know when you're scoring highly, you are working in a world that is changing greatly for the 21st century. So when I sat here as superintendent, what I have to look at is, what does the big picture look like? And I drive these people crazy with that issue. But they are responsible as a board, as I am, to ensure that the education that you get and continue to get, and the ones who are following you up through, get the time, the energy, and also people who do listen to what you're saying. As I sit here and listen, I'm more concerned when I hear the discussion about having to leave school early to go to athletic events. That's a concern of mine that I think we need to address, and I think we've tried to address and will address more. I've also heard some of you say, well, we have meetings early. I don't know what those are, but I think those are things we need to look at. So, okay. So what I would say to you is this, is that what we're looking at is a very big picture. And I'm one of those who push for taking it a few steps at a time to see how it works. But I'm doing it from a clear perspective of 10 years down the road. You guys are all going to be out of school, have gone to college, and you'll be starting your own life. What will be the things you're missing that we should have given you, that we didn't give you? And so we're spending an enormous amount of time trying to decide those things. And that's not easy. You have teachers, some who think it's great and some who don't want to do it. You have many people who don't, but the baseline is this, is if we don't take the responsibility for providing you the best education we possibly can, and not making it look the same as it did in 1951 when I started school, we aren't doing the job we're supposed to do. So now I'll bring it all together, all right, is that what I'm seeing is, if I think there's going to come a day when we're going to have to look at a longer school day to get everything in we need to get in, I think we're going to have to look at a longer school year in order to get everything in we need to get in. And you notice we're not doing that right now. That's going to be something down the road as we begin to work on curriculum and understanding. So that I think the first steps are, what are the things that research is telling us can work to help you, not to hinder you? And, you know, I hear what you're saying and I understand what you're saying, but there's another piece, and I think I heard Trish say it, that at the same time we're going to have a committee that's going to be taking a look at issues around athletics, around meetings, around expectations, to try to meld this all together. Okay, I didn't do it in 2 words, and I'm sorry. Okay. But there is a much bigger piece out there.
Yeah.
I almost hit Hudson.
Well, I know Nora wanted to ask this. Maybe you guys are looking at the beginning of the day and how we're learning in the morning, but I know a lot of people feel, maybe you should look at this, last period is when most kids don't pay attention.
I remember that as a teacher.
So I think just expanding, and also expanding the school days through the year, I think we could cut out a lot of unnecessary stuff in school, and we could even make it shorter and learn just as much instead of doing unnecessary.
And I think that's where it comes back to you, is we need to understand those things. is that because we are adults, and sometimes we forget what it's like to be young people. If you've figured out that I started school in 1951, you can figure out it was a long time ago that I was 16 or 17, okay? So that's a piece to the puzzle, is we need to understand what makes it difficult so that you can't move along, what gets in your way. And I think that's the more important issue that we need to deal with. And by looking at an extended day, we can begin to try to work with you to get those pieces and see what they are.
I think just last thing, I think most people just feel that if nothing's wrong right now, we're all doing fine in school for the most part. We have great test scores, so why fix it? If it's not, like, nothing's wrong. And then, yeah, that's it, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking the time to come and tell us, because as Alan said, we don't always know. We can guess and we do our best, but if we don't have that piece of the feedback, we really don't know where the kids are and what some of the obstacles might be or what some of the concerns are. So please don't think that we're not listening, because we really are. Yes? I'm sorry? Yep. Yep, then we have to move on, because we still have an agenda, but come right up.
Well, I think, as you can see, the students who are represented here, our object clearly is not to make your job any harder than it already is. We all know it's definitely a difficult, and we can see, time-consuming issue. However, the students who are here, if you look around, this is to point an example. We have student council advocates, all of us. Tennis players, lacrosse, softball, all of us are like really involved in the school who are here, and we're the ones who are here trying to take our time to urge you to consider the voice of the students. And I know that I don't want to try to attack or anything. I know there's no point in that. It's just, we'd like to see that there was already the 2-to-1 vote from the school, and there's already been the multiple voices just tonight of how we don't see this as beneficial to us particularly. And I know that you say you're looking for us, for our future, but it's our future, and I feel like we know it best, and we see that you're just trying to overlook our future, make it seem the best way possible it can be. But as students here who are trying to advocate our decision, it's affecting us the most, and I think that's something that I urge you to consider when you vote for or against this. And I know it's also really late, so any preconceived votes you may already have, that seems a little apparent, but we're just trying to urge you to consider the voice of the students mostly. And as you see, all of us here tonight that are advocating for this, we're advocating against. Is there one person here who's advocating for? The strongest voices of the school, I feel, are against right now. And as you say, you can't please everyone in the school. That's obvious. You can't please everyone in anything. But that's why we have democracy. That's why you can please the majority. And as our vote stands, the majority is against.
Thank you. Any other board members want to make any comments? No? Was that a yes or no, or a... No? Okay. All in favor? 5-0.
What was it?
5-0. Okay, backing up. Thank you. Communication, Alan?
Yes.
Letter of resignation?
Yep. Well, my understanding is that I just need to give these letters to you. It's not necessarily something you need to vote on. The first one is from Deborah Tominski. I'm sorry the students left, because I was going to check to see if they knew who it was, because this is a name you don't normally recognize. Deborah is a high school physical education teacher, has been there for several years. And as she writes in her letter, this will be her last year teaching at Cape Elizabeth High School. She's enjoyed her teaching experience here, made many great friends teaching in Cape Elizabeth, and it has allowed her to be close to her children as they progress through the system. Her daughter will graduate in June of 2008. She has recently remarried, and she is moving permanently back to her home in Vinyl Haven Island, where she and her husband will start the next chapter of their lives. I know with the current state of budget and with regard to our colleagues, it is helpful to know well ahead of time when a vacancy exists. For that reason, I would like you to know early in order to advertise for the best possible candidate. So this is a resignation.
Thank you. And you have another?
I have a second letter. This is from Paul Casey, who teaches at the middle school. Paul has been teaching at the middle school for quite a few years. What Paul is writing to you is that I'm writing to request your consideration in allowing me to continue in my capacity as a grade 8 teacher on a half-time basis. I wish to continue my instructional practice with grade 8 students in the academic area of social studies and language arts. Throughout the course of the past 18 years at Cape Elizabeth Middle School, I have served in the roles of classroom teacher in grades 6 through 8, student council advisor, Chewonki counselor, and track and cross-country coach. I am hoping to be able to continue my extracurricular involvement with students, even though my academic instructional status will be part-time. This one I do need you to take a vote on, just because we're moving him from full-time to part-time, because at this point in time I don't think we'll be looking for anyone to replace him, but just so that it is official on our records.
Ellen, it says continue, though, so I don't understand if we're...
Say that to me again.
It says in here continue as part-time?
No, this will be his first. He's been full-time up to this point.
Okay.
So he's continuing with us, but at a part-time?
At a part-time basis.
Okay.
Yep.
I misread that as well. Okay. So you're looking for a vote?
Yes.
From us on that. Is that later on in the agenda?
I don't think she put it in there, if I'm not mistaken.
Do you want to take it then out of turn now and vote on it now?
Sure.
Okay.
I move that we approve the request to allow Paul Casey to continue as a half-time position at the middle school.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Trish.
Was that Trish?
Yep. Discussion?
Yes, Alan.
Yes.
Are we going to have to replace his other half position with a long-term sub, or?
My sense is right now, and I'm looking at Steve to be sure, but I don't think we need to replace him. Am I correct?
No, that was one of the cuts. That was
Right.
0.5
Right.
that I had in 8th grade.
So it's in your budget as a half-time when we heard that he was going to do this.
In order to help meet the 6%, part of the cuts were, I'll just do what I can do for that position.
I think just to clarify, Paul had already talked with Steve about the possibility. Originally, he was planning to leave completely, and then he decided he would like to stay for another year or two as a half-time person. But Steve, knowing the position, he knew he had to make a half-time cut, and so that cut is in your budget at the 6% rate.
So, my concern going forward here, should he choose to return full-time, then we would have to add that other half-time position back into the budget.
That's why I'm having you make the vote right now. You're turning it into a half-time position.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have to go back.
Okay.
Other questions?
Okay, well, no, and that was my concern. That was truly my concern.
Other questions? All in favor? 5-0.
Thank you.
Alan?
Yes, the third piece I have is a letter from a high school teacher, Joe Conroy. I'd like to read the letter to you, but I'd like to make a couple of statements before I do that. Is that, as you know, in the process of when you are looking at budget changes, you sometimes have to make adjustments accordingly. A while ago, I think it was meeting before last, you sat and had a long discussion about a Latin 2 position. And because we had 19 students who applied for it, said they were going to take that course this coming year. As signups have ended up, we have only 9 students who are going to be in the course. But because of the agreement you made as a board, I've got that position there. That therefore means we have to make some other decisions as we go along, as we tried to move our budget from a 13.28 to a 6. In that process, We had to look at staffing, we had to look at adjustments in staffing, etc. We also had to look at people who were part-timers with us, not because they're poor teachers, but because of the existence of contract and how we move along with that. As it happened after the decision on the Latin 2 position, then we were in the position of having to make some cuts at the high school. And one of the cuts that was made was for a very highly recognized teacher who originally was a full-time teacher here in Cape Elizabeth. Quite a few years ago, moved from a full-time to teaching 2 periods a day. Then, as time went on, he had left again and then was hired back for 1 period a day. He teaches some students who struggle, who are not necessarily identified as special education students, but are kids who are struggling. And I think one of the issues we look at constantly are those students, because I don't want those students to be lost. And if you look at MEA results, you'll see that we have a certain percent of our students who really struggle. So when you listen to the students who were here a few minutes ago who are really representing themselves well, we do have, not all of our students do score highly. Not all of our students do test well. And so one of the things we constantly look at is what are we doing and what do we need to do in order to ensure that students who do not qualify for special education services but yet struggle, how do we manage their programs? In doing this, when we looked at this, we looked at Joe's position, not because of Joe, not because of the position, but because we had to struggle with a change in order to fund another position. So at that time, Joe wrote a letter, which I think is a very good letter, and it makes us stop and think. And I would say to you as board members, I have a feeling in the last couple of weeks you stopped and thought about this again, as we've heard some discussions about students and some of the classes they're in. So I would ask you your patience while I read this to you and for the public, but then also make a few comments afterwards. And the letter is dated March 19th, 2008, and it's to the Cape Elizabeth School Board. The Cape Elizabeth school system is considered to be one of the best school systems in the state. Recently, it was honored as one of the best systems in the nation. People know that it encourages all students to excel in scholastics, in sports, and in all extracurricular activities. In each, the classroom teacher and the coach develop environments in which the young people can appreciate and enrich his or her own potential. The school community has established a mission and vision statement that identifies the standards by which one can evaluate the success or failure of teaching in our schools. About students and learning, the mission and vision statement affirms, we believe that all students can learn, all students should be challenged and supported in their learning, every student has abilities and talents that are worthy of being recognized and developed. Students benefit when they are held in clear and appropriate expectations. By providing meaningful and engaging education, we will connect with the strengths and the passions for learning for each student. And education must prepare students to become competitive individuals and productive citizens. As a result of my years as a teacher and as a supervisor of curriculum in the high school, I know these statements to be essential truths for successful teaching. Additionally, the mission and vision statement affirms educating is a shared responsibility between students, teachers, parents, and the community. We must provide a wide range of learning opportunities for our students and staff to be successful, and the quality of the student-teacher relationship directly impacts learning and achievement. All these beliefs rightfully focus on the student person and the duty of a school community to support his or her learning. The mentor for the student is the teacher. All other persons are support individuals for them. The student wants to learn, the teacher wants to teach. In a discussion last week with Jeff, I learned that he had regretfully decided to eliminate the 1/5 English position. Upon hearing his apology and explanation for his decision, I became sad for my students. Obviously, no money existed for them, a class this year of 14 students. He expected that the incoming freshman class would have fewer students with similar needs. However, these freshmen would be added to the current 14 students. Questions. How will the school and the community provide for the talents and abilities of this large class? How can such a large group of students be challenged and supported in their learning? Without doubt, all students are exceptional. My exceptional students are an eclectic group of persons. Each wants to learn, each wants to improve his or her skills, notwithstanding individual challenges. Emotional challenges, attention deficit challenges, high anxiety challenges, Asperger's syndrome challenges, reading ability challenges. All of them have low self-image. During the history of this successful course, a fair proportion of these students, with support, have taken CP English, have become employed, have gone to college. Contrary to the mission and vision statement, education must prepare students to become competent individuals and productive citizens. Our community does not equally support all its exceptional students. The community funds accelerated courses and various language courses, all of which anticipate prominent careers. Individuals in the town successfully seek donations for bleachers and turf for the athletic fields. Some parents and some students campaign for additional courses in the curriculum. To save money, to be thrifty, we eliminate 1/5 English position for the students who have no sponsors. We add additional personnel to the staff. We add courses in the curriculum. To be faithful to our mission, we must spend the money assigned to us fairly. We need to be advocates for our silent, exceptional students. We need to have an appropriate sequential English curriculum for them. Words without deeds become hollow. The mission and vision statement is our promise and judge. We must not only believe these words, we must also practice them. And it is signed sincerely by Joe P. Conroy, teacher at Cape Elizabeth High School. The reason I feel it's important to read this is I think it sends a very clear message to us all, is that the struggles, just like you talked about a little while ago with calendar, are many. And we work constantly to try to meet all of the goals. I know very well, I know Jeff Shedd well enough to know that his vision and his view was not to take away from the education of those students who struggle. But we also, you as a board and I as a superintendent, always have to remember that when we make a decision, it may cause another decision to happen. I'm pleased to tell you, and I'm sure Jeff would be even more pleased to tell you, but I'll do it right now, Jeff, and then allow you to add words. Jeff and I were pretty sure when this happened, because Jeff and I talked about this for a long time, that we were going to have a staff change at the high school, that will leave openings so that this course that Joe teaches can continue and bring him back to do it. But we needed to make decisions of the moment based on a cut from a 13.28 to a 6% budget, and at the same time add a Latin 2 teacher, which was the request of the board. So what I'm looking at is this. I think it is difficult in the best of circumstances to make these types of decisions. But when you make these types of decisions, there's always going to be something that comes back to meet you square on that you have to consider. So the reason I read this to you tonight is, I read it to you because I don't think we're going to have this cut. I know we're not going to have this cut. Joe Conroy will still be there. He will still be dealing with those teachers. But we had to make that initial cut until we could see what was happening with the situation. And I will tell you that that change in staffing has not, we have not received that resignation yet to allow Joe to step in, but I know it is coming. But I think the words that Joe said are really important for all of us to listen to, because we do not only have high-performing kids. We have kids who are identified and require special education services. We have students who struggle at what we call the middle, the CP, and we have some young people who struggle just to keep going. And I have had a very interesting discussion with several students in the last few days, and I know we have some champions out there. And Ben Raymond is one that I've heard over and over again about what a champion he is. But I put this before you because you don't need to take a vote on it, but I think it's an important message, and I think it's one that is you, because I know how much you all care about young people. And I recognize that. And I recognize that when we start talking about class sizes and possibly reducing class sizes, possibly talking about do we have too larger classes or too smaller classes, I think this is the type of issue we also need to hear and listen to from a professional who I consider a very highly qualified professional who sees some of the needs of our students. Thank you.
Karen?
I did, one request that I have as a school board member in the future as we go through the budget process, when we were adding the Latin position, and I saw there was sort of a trade-off of taking away a 1/5 position. I didn't really get any narrative on what that 5th position related to is in this instance, how that one position specifically impacted a demographic in our school that's particularly vulnerable. So I think it would be very helpful in the future to have that information. And then I just want to comment that I am very concerned about this specific population in our school for a variety of reasons. And one of the things that at some point in time, I hope we have a conversation as a board about why we might not have a diploma program. That could be, once again, because that would be an increase in staff, but we have CP, we have honors, and yet there's this population that is struggling to pass their courses, and they're not meeting the requirements for special ed. So I think we could probably be doing a better job serving them, and I know that Dominic would probably agree, as all of us probably want to do. So I just hope that this comes up in one of our workshops and that we have an opportunity to explore it more in depth and make sure that we're serving these students as well as we could be.
Jeff? Yes.
I just want to make sure that people are not walking away with the wrong impression. The proposal was not to eliminate the course. That was never part of the proposal. It was never part of what I talked about with Mr. Conroy. The proposal was to absorb a staff cut because of a declining population. But to have, the effect of it would have been to have the course taught by another teacher. And that was not in any way a criticism or joke. He's a fabulous teacher. He's just a fabulous teacher. I think some of you probably had him after watching Linda. So it really wasn't about that population. In fact, in some ways, the reading literacy support program that I'm proposing for next year, that is still in the budget at this point, is really designed to actually enhance the services for the group of kids that we're really talking about. So I just want to make sure people understand that. But essentially what it was going to... I needed, in order to make some sort of change, in order to assist the department to get down to the 6%. And there was only one, and so I wanted to, but I didn't need to make a massive change. So there was only one position in the school that was a 1/5 position. So I made the decision to do that. And what I was going to do was bring over from the Achievement Center a 1/5 position that gave me more than full-time coverage to do writing conferences to the Achievement Center. So really, there was going to be a net sort of zero increase, but kind of a reassignment. And if I hadn't done that, what I was concerned about is I would have had to, in order to get to the same place, what was then a 2/5 English position, down to a 1/5 English position, then I would have had two 1/5 English positions in the high school, which didn't make any sense from a staffing standpoint. That's more details than you probably need to know. But the key thing that I want you to understand is that this was not an effort to eliminate a course. The course is very valuable, it's very needy, and the students are in need of it, and they would have continued to have it next year anyway. And I'm glad now they're going to have it, as it looks now, to be taught by Joe again, because he does a great job.
Before you leave.
Sure.
So, are you seeing an increase for the Latin 2 class? Do you foresee that you're going to have more kids joining that?
I doubt it.
Than the 9?
No, I think it'll, and I haven't had this conversation with my teacher yet, so I'm a little,
Okay.
But I suspect it will go down, actually, a little bit. That would be my guess. Just because of the normal scheduling. In other words, if you have students for any given class, the singleton class, meaning there's only one section of it, the likelihood that we will be able to meet 100% of their requests, I think, is small. It could be. We could, but...
Joe must be a great teacher because he was my class advisor, and I made it.
Oh, he did.
A couple years ago.
He is a fabulous...
That was a couple years ago, too.
An absolutely unique experience to go in and watch him work. It's just a real joy. It really is.
Thank you.
I truly think, going back to what you said, Karen, though, is this is probably one of the most difficult parts for you as a board member, is being able to get all of this information to you as we're trying to make these changes and as we're looking at the different issues that come forward. And so it's, but I think what Joe wrote is something we need to listen to very carefully for those kids. And I know you said you have the same concerns I do about those students and what we do for them as everyone else does.
Okay, Alan, moving along to budget update.
Yes. I have quite a few pieces of paper here to share with you. As you know, because I sent you an email, that we did get the EPS information late yesterday. And we've taken a look at that and want to share some of that information with you. So the first piece that I'm going to pass to you is, no, I guess I'll do this piece first. This is as the budget looks in a revision with the new EPS figures on it. 2, 3, 4. Oh, sorry about that. As I think I shared with you yesterday, today, and in my email, we received our $239,427 more than we did last year. Now, I know that there's been a lot of emails going back and forth, particularly amongst 2 or 3 people, trying to figure out why we have that. But I think the important piece that we need to understand is that, and I'll give you some documents in just a few minutes to show that, is that our evaluation in property has gone up. Our population, according to students, by the statistics I have right now, is a negative 1%, so that doesn't show a major fall. And so by using the formula that they use, that the state uses, that we have come up with this $239,427. I know there's a lot of other questions to go with this, and they are questions that I am going to work on tomorrow, but it shows us that we have $239,427. So if you looked at this document that you have in front of you, and if you go over to the 4th line down where it says dollar change, you see where I am? Mm-hmm. Okay, you will see that we continue at 6% to have $19,919,120 as our proposed budget at 6%, which is an increase of $1,127,497. When you see the allocation, you will see that we've increased it. You remember originally we gave it to you as the one we had the year before, the $2,836,000. We've now increased it to $3,075,610, which is the increase of $239,427, which therefore changes the look of our state allocation as far as revenue is concerned. None of the other things changed until you get down to the local property tax. Based on that information, based on a 6% budget, our local property tax would be 5.89%, or our total budget, again, would be at 6%, which if you go down below, takes a look at our the town valuation and its increase, the mills raised, etc. So our budget has changed as far as revenue and where we're looking at from 7.10% on the tax rate to 5.57 based on the mills for education. So that you need to understand that just because that shows a difference in the picture of what that looks like. To understand that perhaps a little better, I'm going to pass to you a chart which came out, which is an interesting chart, because what it's going to show you is every town in Maine and who got more, who got less. And I know there's a lot of fishing out there now to see why that happened, and there are many different reasons for it, but I think it just helps you see what it looks like. This is passed by the legislature day before yesterday. So these are supposed to be the final results. Yes, it's very hard to read, and what I'm doing is giving it to you so you can just get some comparisons. You can see Cape Elizabeth on there, but then you can begin to look at other towns. You will see some towns that have increased dramatically above where we are, and you will see some towns that have gone down dramatically below where we are. And so it gives you some sense of the comparative data that we have. The other piece that I'm going to give to you, and I'm giving it to you now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I am going to give you the ED 279, which used to be the ED 281. but it's now been changed because of the change in the way the government is handling the consolidation. This document is a 4-page document. It's fairly heavy in detail, but it's the document that I get each year that tells me exactly what our EPS formula will be. If you look at it, on the first page you will see it talks about attending students, it talks about each area, it talks about the number of teachers, guidance, librarians, health, etc., based on the EPS model. And then it also has what we actually have as compared to the EPS model. And you know, I've said to you many times over, there are some of these things we have larger because EPS is a baseline, not a final line. It will continue on down through there with some of the other statistics, but what I really want to take you to is page 3. Is that right? Hang on just a minute. I think I just skipped where I wanted to go. I'm looking for my 97%. Bear with me.
This is
Okay, I don't pick it up right enough quick. I looked at it before I came here tonight. Oh, here we go. On page 2. On page 2, you'll see it's A, operation cost allocations. If you scan down there to almost the bottom, you'll see operational allocation with EPS transition at 97%. So that is the percent that we're getting this year. So our 90% EPS is 12,573,481.33. Excuse me, I read the wrong line. Skip down one. 12,196,276.89. The adjustment between that comes out to the amount that we will be receiving for EPS. But the reason I want you to see that is that in a few minutes I'm going to talk about state law. And if you watch the news today, the governor is looking, I don't know if he's finally vetoed or not, but he did. So he is vetoing the educational acts that have been before him now, so it is now back in the legislature. The original plan is that we would get less money. We would get 49% instead of 55% of the total budget. And so that has changed, and therefore it is in hold right now as the legislature returns to it. But again, what I want to be sure that you understand is what they take a look at is our valuation of property, our number of students, then through that formula they come up with the EPS level where we stand. They come up with those finances for us. So there's a lot of information here. I'm not going to spend the whole evening doing it. It's getting late as it is. But I just want you to have these to read, and then we can begin to answer specific questions around them to get some sense. You also will have this set of sheets, which is the description of the page. So it will answer a lot of the questions as you go through. This is not normally a document that I hand to you, because it really is what I have to use to determine the budget. But because this has been such a strong issue out there, I feel strongly you need to have this material to look at and begin to get some sense of what that picture looks like. So basically what you have in front of you is how we have looked at the 2008-2009 budget with the state revenues allocated at the extra $239,427. You have the actual document from the state and what it looks like. You have the explanation of that, and you also have the comparisons on a statewide basis. So that it gives you some documentation to look at. I think what really strikes me as a superintendent when I look at this is I look at Cape Elizabeth first, but then I also look at us in comparison with other districts, and particularly districts that are somewhat we compare to, and to see where we are accordingly. But I also look at it from the perspective of when I have to look at revenues for our budget, where are we according to revenues in this picture? I'd be happy to answer questions. I don't think we want to get into a heavy-duty discussion of this, but if there are any specific questions that I might be able to do, I will try to answer them.
Do you know
Nope.
how firm this 239, 427% change is at this point?
Our understanding is that is the final decision. That is the one, the governor's budget has been passed, and so therefore, that's the final decision, from what we were told today.
So what, you mentioned earlier that the governor's new, the education reform law was vetoed. The governor has his proposal in front of the legislation. You mentioned some sort of 55 versus 49%.
And I'll talk about that in just a minute when I get to these.
That will not impact the allocation.
No, because at this point in time, it stayed at 55 because of the way the law was written. The new law tried to change it to 49. The governor's veto left it at 55.
Do you happen to know if the governor wants to reduce it to 49?
My sense is no.
Okay. Happy, do you have any more questions?
No.
I just have a clarification question.
Just tell me what page you're on.
Page 2.
Page 2.
Your operating allocation versus operating allocation with EPS transition at 97%. What is this EPS transition at 97%?
This is, we do not get 100% of EPS. We only get 97%.
We mean all school districts.
All school districts across the state. We were supposed to be at 100% this year.
Right.
They've decided to leave us at 97%.
The difference between the 97% number and the above number is not is not our funding.
It's not the whole 390?
That's 377,000.
Okay.
So that's not our funding number. We get less than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot less.
Okay.
Okay.
And if you look at the last page, Rebecca,
Yeah.
number 62,
Yeah.
that is the one that talks about the 100% EPS total allocation.
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay.
That's what it should be.
All right. It's nice for them to let us see what that is. And I just do want to point out that I'm still flummoxed as to how SAD 51, with a decrease in student population, could have gotten a 22% increase.
I'm shocked at that.
And I just have to say that when Augusta talks about how we need to be so much more clearer about the student budget process, the school budget process for our local vote, and they still cannot seem to explain to us in any sensible way why one district gets more than another. It aggravates me to no end.
Yep. And that's why I found that page very interesting.
Yeah.
I looked at it, looked at the comparisons, looked at it red compared to black.
I mean, and let's just be clear, that increase was $1.2 million over last year, and they had a decrease in student population. It's much more substantial than what we have.
I'm blown away by the 1,496% increase in Highland. Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I just wish, and I hope that our representatives and senators that represent Cape Elizabeth will assist us in trying to get a clear answer as to how the EPS formula works.
Okay. Update on legislative issues?
And I brought just 3 legislative pieces because just because it's what's in the legislature. I haven't brought these to pass out to you. I figured there was a point where I'd overwhelm you with paper, so if you want copies, we'll get them to you tomorrow. But there are 3 bills. The first one is 2272, and that's the one that Rebecca just asked about, which is an act to reduce the percentage of cost of local schools paid by the state from 55% to 49%. That is the one that was presented. The summary of it is to drop 55 to 49 for public education from kindergarten through grade 12, and the bill directs that the amount of savings resulting from the reduction be used to provide funding for the state's foster care program, long-term care services, and home-based care services, and the Maine community colleges.
Alan, I think I need to correct myself. I thought you were talking about the overall reform legislation. I don't know the status of that law.
This one has, this is one of the pieces that he has vetoed.
He has vetoed it. Okay, good.
Yes.
Was the state ever actually at 55%? I didn't think they had got there, so what exactly does this do?
We were there last year. Yes, we've been there for a while. This is moving back from 55 to 49.
Which is what the voters voted on, so they can do it without going back to the voters? Because the voters said 55%.
Yeah. Yeah. But this legislation, which is put in by Representative Joy from Crystal, was to drop that from 55 to 49 in order to use that money for foster care programs, long-term care services, and home-based care services and Maine community colleges. So they're going to use that 6% to do that. The second bill, an act to clarify and improve, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, an act to clarify and improve the laws governing the formation of regional school districts. This is the one that has caused the most disruption in Augusta. And this is the one where they are trying to revise some of this. It's probably you've seen the issues around unions, and there is a move to try to return to unions. The governor is very much against that. So this is the one that he also has not accepted, and so is back to the legislature. What you'll hear on the news, I listened tonight just to hear what they were saying, is that the way the governor's looking at it, and I'm not ready to argue one way or the other, the way the governor's looking at it, there have been an awful lot of pieces put into the pot, and he doesn't agree with a lot of the pieces. And so the legislature is going to have to go back and take a look at that piece and decide where they are. But this includes all of the things that some of the things we've been talking about as a community, and I think probably the one, as you've heard me say, I'm most worried about is the June 10th vote, because originally the plan was the town council could not act prior to 10 days before the vote. So by the way the law was written, they would have to vote, because June 1st, I believe, is a Sunday. They would have to vote on June 2nd for us to vote on June 10th as citizens. This act increased that to 14 days, so that it would allow them to do it in May. But again, this has not been passed. It was emergency legislation. So as emergency legislation, if it had passed, then that change would have occurred. And at this point, it has not been done. So that's where that is. 2281 is an act to amend the laws governing the reorganization of school administrative units. And this is the part of it that really gets down into some of the issues of unions versus SADs, or what used to be SADs. And again, is when they have not come to a final point on it, and this one is not a financial one, but it's making decisions. So from the perspective of Cape Elizabeth, the one that was dropped, an act to clarify and improve the laws governing the formation of regional school units, probably affects us the least, because we are not forming a regional school unit. But it is the vote piece that I was hoping would get some change, and it doesn't look like it has at this point in time. So at this point in time, we will still be under the 10-day limit unless the legislature goes back and reacts on this with a 2/3 vote. So those are the three pieces of legislation that are setting up there now. And I would say to you that the other piece that was sent to us is from the Maine Heritage Policy Center. And the Maine Heritage Policy Center, if you will remember, has been active in some of the moves that have gone on before with Tabor and some of the others. And of course, what they are looking at in this legislation is that they still feel that school districts are spending too much money. And so they are looking at where they can go with this. So this has been presented to the legislature, and it is not an act, but it's just information that they have presented. So those are the newest pieces of legislation that have been very exciting at the state level at this point in time. And again, if anyone you would like to have these, I'll be more than happy to send them on to you. I just did not do them today because I knew I had so much paper to pass on anyway.
Thank you, Al.
And I think I'm done with all that fun stuff.
Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. Trish, policies for second reading?
Yes. What you have before you are all the policies primarily related to instructional support that we were presented for first reading last month. Individual education plans, IHBA, IHBAA, referral, pre-referral of students with disabilities, IHBAA, and the administrative guidelines that support that, IHBAC, which is child find, IKA, student assessment, JFC, dropout, JKF, disciplinary removal of students with disabilities and a supporting guideline, JKGA, which is timeout life space rooms, supporting guideline, and I think that might be it. And there were no comments at last month's meeting, so I would like to move that we approve these policies as presented.
Thank you, Trish. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rebecca. Discussion?
I had one question.
Yep.
Just on the dropout prevention, student withdrawal from school. It's mentioned something about having a dropout prevention committee. Is that something we currently have? Okay, that's it. Oh, good. I was going to ask.
Any other questions? No? All in favor? 5-0. Okay. Under new business, Alan, consideration and action on high school extracurricular athletic fee position nomination?
Yep, and you do have the documents in here. Again, I will comment, these are on the new guidelines and hopefully contain the information that's necessary. At the high school level, we have Doug Donovan, who would be the freshman baseball coach. He'd be a level 3, and it talks about the fact that he would receive a total stipend of $2,122.50. Just to go back, I was asked earlier today, and just to speak to this, these are not new positions, these are filling positions. Steve Martin is softball assistant. As you can see, he is not on the pay scale. I am assuming that he receives pay from the boosters. Am I correct on that? Jeff, do you know? I'm sorry, Steve Martin.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Betsy Hayes is tennis assistant. It will be at $19.35, and as you'll see down the side, there is a brief biography about her since she's new in the position. On the back, you have Bruce Whidden, as track assistant, at $17.37.50, and Paul Snyder as track assistant for $4.37.50. And those are the positions from the high school. Do you want me to continue with the middle school also? Do you want to do all of them? From the middle school, you have from Scott Labby, Angie Daly, middle school outdoor track at $1,575. There is a brief biographical sketch below on her. Alexandra Sawyer, 7th grade girls lacrosse at $1,800. And Corinne Cool, is that right? For $1,800.
Alan,
Oh, yes, sorry.
I'm sorry. I know that we asked this question in the past, and I think the form is wonderful that we have. And I always get confused, and maybe we need to look at possibly adding one more thing to our form. But we talk about new hires, yes or no. But what we don't talk about is new position. And I think that's always, we always end up asking that question. Yes, it's a new hire, but is it a replacement for somebody we have, or is it a new position?
A brand new position.
Right,
Okay.
right. And
Yep.
I'm just thinking that that's probably, I'm just speaking for myself, but that's an important piece that we need to know as a board. Does that, anybody disagree with that? And not trying to add to you, because your form is wonderful, because it's so much better than what we had, but I still end up asking that
Yep,
question.
sure.
Is it a new position?
Yep, no, we can do that.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. So those are the athletic ones. And I do have co-curricula from Dominic. And these are 3 people on the Special Olympics. They are the same people, I believe, that you approved last year. Yes. And they are Morgan Burns, Karen Johnson, and Kristen Cobb, who are splitting $1,562, which is the amount set aside to do the Special Olympics program.
I move that we accept the recommendations for the high school, middle school, and Special Olympics extracurricular positions as presented by the superintendent.
Thank you, Rebecca. Is there a second?
Second.
Linda? Any discussion, questions? No? All in favor? 5-0. All right. And Alan, oh, no, we did the middle school, I'm sorry. Oh, and the Special Olympics. We did it all.
I just moved it very quickly ahead.
Yes, you did. I'm just crossing things out. Okay, then, Trish, back to you. Consideration of policies for first reading.
Yes, the first policy you have in your packet is ACAA. There is no change other than an addition of a reference to a form. So that's just an FYI. The two policies we're presenting for first reading are JLF, which is reporting child abuse and neglect. This is a, there's been some change in the legislation around that, and the form that you see in front of you, the version that you see in front of you is the most recent from MSMA. And these, actually, we have, yeah. These are, and then there are supporting forms, just sort of as an FYI on that. And the next one that we are presenting for first reading is IIB, which is class size. There is one change you'll note to the in grammatical change. And the policy committee has reviewed these and is presenting them as they are. And just as a reminder on what the process is, when we look at a policy, the policy committee we'll take a look at a policy. We're going through the process of updating our binder, which is our policies, which is an ongoing process, and we will also look at policies as requested by either board members or students. For example, when we did the substance abuse policy, we'll look at it, bring it to, discuss it in policy committee, bring it to the school board for their consideration, subsequent to a first reading or during the first reading. Anyone who has concerns about the policy can then so note those and share those with us, and then we will take them back to the policy committee, review them, and then bring them back to the board for a vote at the second reading. So none of these tonight require action, just presentation based on policy discussion.
Thank you, Trish. Anybody have anything for Trish to take back to the policy committee on the new ones? No? Okay. Thank you. Committee reports. Is there anybody who has a committee report that they feel is important to share at this time? Usually you have something, so just as looking. I'm looking on the left too. No?
The Finance Committee met, but we spent a lot of the time talking about the budget process, and we did have our presentation to the Town Council last Tuesday. There is another Town Council workshop, you asked, tomorrow night. They will continue their consideration of the budget, and I encourage people, if they're interested, to go to the website, because there is a schedule of the Town Council vote and public hearing on the budget.
And tomorrow night's meeting is here at 7:30, is that correct?
I believe so.
Yes.
Okay, just so folks know. Great. Public comment on agenda items. I don't see any public folks looking for that. School board agenda requests. Announcement of upcoming meetings. Do you want me to announce them, or are they on the website? They are on the website. So I guess we'll do that.
Can I just add one?
Yes.
The Strategic Planning Committee is meeting on Thursday, May 1st, at 12:30. And
First, 12:30, and is that in the Jordan Conference Room?
actually, no, I think that's
my
Alan's
office.
office.
Alan's office, superintendent's office. Okay. Great. Any other changes, conclusions? Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Jeez, I thought maybe there wasn't one for a second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Thank you very much.